There is a fascinating shift happening right now, a movement where people are returning to vintage technology. You might be thinking of vinyl records, but now even the iPod that were released more than 20 years ago qualifies as ancient technology. We're seeing a transition from overcomplicated phone cameras to simple point and shoot cameras or even Polaroids that focus on capturing cherished moments in the real world, moments that AI simply cannot recreate. You can even make a statement by wearing an analog watch. There is a timeless elegance to these handcrafted pieces that tell the world that you aren't always on, bound by constant notifications. Instead, you are in control of your own pace. Man's slavery to instinct was never meant to be exploited by machine. Now, let's clear something up. Digital minimalism isn't the same as digital detox. Digital detox is a knee-jerk reaction by people trying to escape the overwhelming pull of technology. I bet many of you have already tried the digital detox, and even if you have made it to the full 30 days, the gravitational pull of technology was way too strong, right? And since everyone else is doing it, you had no choice but to join in with the addiction. The functional equivalent of digital detox today is like trying to quit smoking or alcohol. It is hard, and perpetual modernization does not make this any easier. Then what is digital minimalism? It is not about fighting the urge to check your phone. It's about making small, deliberate changes that over time become part of who you are, so you don't have those urges anymore. So, how do you start your digital minimalism journey? I often get asked about dopamine detox, but not so much about digital minimalism. And honestly, as a neuroscientist, this makes absolutely no sense to me. The brain has over 100 neurotransmitters, all in a moment-to-moment state of flux. To me, it's not about withdrawing from a single chemical, but rather bringing hierarchical neurochemical balance to whole brain networks. This process is by no means linear and requires multi-level integration between the central and autonomic nervous systems. Now, this might sound complex, but I'm here to make it simple. I personally employ 3 non-negotiables for digital minimalism, and I invite you to experiment with these in your own life. So, what is the first non-negotiable? Despite what anyone will tell you, the simplest, most effective way to bring the brain into a neurochemical balance is quite simply sleep. It does not cost you anything, but there are certainly tools that you can use to assist with the process. 2 things affect your sleep quality: sleep hygiene and stimulant intake. So let's start with sleep hygiene. Step 1 is to throw out your alarm clock. This is a relic from the Industrial Revolution. I personally do not wake up to an alarm unless absolutely necessary, like an early morning flight. Instead, I set a sleep alarm that is tracked with a biometric device that maps my 3-day sleep cycle and sets my bedtime for the most optimal recovery. Lighting is another big factor. I use lighting that does not exceed 3200 Kelvin, such as salt lamps and infrared lighting. If you've watched my TEDx talk, you'll know that I lived in a cave for 3 months without any running water or electricity. This profoundly changed my sleep cycle. My only sources of light was the campfire and sometimes the stars and the moon. When I returned to the city, I chose not to acclimatize to city lights. That was 8 years ago, and I really don't have any interest in going back to the city pace. Your chronotype may be different from mine, so I recommend tracking what benefits your sleep. In this morning routine obsessed culture, I encourage you to start by creating a sleep routine. Now, the second part of a good night's sleep is a stimulant-free lifestyle. Due to my upbringing, I do not take any medication, drugs, alcohol, or even coffee. You may question, what does stimulants have to do with digital minimalism? So, hear me out. When I arrived in Australia at the age of 23, I tried to fit in with the culture that is built upon coffee and alcohol. I started with coffee, a small mocha. They said it would be a great entry-level coffee, and I was awake for 4 days straight. My attempt at alcohol did not go any different. This led me down the notorious path of starting Australia's first and to date largest drug and alcohol-free movement. This was initially met with resistance, and people thought that it was a joke. But within a few years, our events grew to 600 to 1,500 people, and I have no hesitation in saying that I have zero regrets in missing out on getting wasted on the weekends. The point of this analogy is that technology is the modern equivalent of social lubricants such as alcohol and drugs. It is hard to escape, and you will face resistance. It will be a challenge even to participate in society, let alone connect with people. This was most evident during the stay-at-home crisis, but we'll get to this a little bit later in the video. For now, I want to emphasize that it was never about chasing dopamine, ecstasy, or any other artificial high. You can't simply avoid one chemical and hope that your life will magically fall into place. Instead, design a life around real connections, movement, nature, and balance, which no amount of stimulants, digital or otherwise, can ever replace. This lifestyle leaves no reason to detox, as it is not toxic in the first place. This is the second key to digital minimalism that I don't think gets talked about that often. Build a life that you don't feel the need to escape from. To be sure, though, we will be tempted by our vices, and that's okay, because digital minimalism is about making small changes, and we will soon find ourselves trading our vices for our non-negotiables. This brings us to our second non-negotiable, which is digital withdrawal. Like many of you, I abandoned MySpace for Facebook in the late 2000s. It was great at first, but when smartphones arrived on the scene, I found myself doom scrolling. It is no surprise that the bell icon literally mimics the actual bell used in Pavlovian conditioning experiments. So, a decade ago, I turned off all notifications on my phone and turned it to silent so that I won't be bothered unintentionally. Then something would happen that would change everything. The stay-at-home crisis appeared out of nowhere, and we were suddenly locked up in our homes with nothing but our digital devices to keep us comfort. A new app also arrived on the scene with vertical videos, and this for me was the end of the line. I've never used TikTok, and when Instagram introduced Reels, I left that platform too. I still post content, but I use tools that allow me to avoid opening the app. The real game changer for me was when in 2023 Apple released Assistive Access. I've always wanted a minimalist phone, but I was too deep in the Apple ecosystem to switch. Unlike what the name suggests, Assistive Access is quite the contrary. It is inconvenient, glitchy, and annoying. And this was exactly what I was looking for. I have no more than 12 apps on my phone with limited functionality. I've sacrificed convenience for an exercise in patience, dopamine for delayed gratification, and digital noise for a clear focus. I can safely report that I have no desire in switching back. And this brings us to our third and final non-negotiable, which is AIsafety. Similar to setting boundaries with toxic people, I set boundaries with machine from the very first interaction. The ChatGPT interface mimics a messaging format like iMessage or WhatsApp by design. The app itself has no place to exist on my phone. I refuse to have conversation with machine. Earlier this year, when I was meticulously preparing for my TEDx talk, people suggested using ChatGPT. In my view, I have no reason to stand on the red dot if the words that I spoke were not my own. Our interaction with technology is something that concerns me deeply, and using ChatGPT was in direct contradiction with the message of my TEDx talk, which is the danger of replacing instinct with technology. TED, however, had other plans and banned my talk for being offensive. Ironically, if I had used ChatGPT, I probably would not have been banned. I never thought that an institution like TED would be the one to demonize original thought. You can actually watch the full TEDx talk linked in the descriptions below and make up your own mind of whether this is offensive. So back to generative AI, which is taking a toll on our ability to think. I've seen people argue with ChatGPT as if it were a real person. And while younger generations are experiencing AI fatigue, I'm finding that older generations are experiencing a profound sense of machine mysticism and have almost become emotionally attached to it. At a time when people are reporting the highest levels of loneliness than any other time in history, there is an evolving preference to connect with machine than humans. So if you have watched this so far, hopefully you can see that digital minimalism isn't about deprivation. It's quite the opposite. It's about finding our way back to the real world, setting strong boundaries with machine, and building a life that does not need detox in the first place. Are you with me on this? Share with me your thoughts in the comments below.